And she will be going to grad school in the fall, which I think she's very excited about. She's just the sweetest person. If you don't know her, you really should get to know her because she's just very sweet. But she'll be presenting on Breaking the Chains.
All right. Oh, thank you. I needed that. Okay. To start out today, I'm going to need a little bit of your help. I just want you to kind of role play with me a little bit. Just take some time and imagine being in prison. Not a very glamorous thing to think about. Imagine being in prison not because you're a thief, you're a murderer, you've done some sort of heinous, cruel crime. Imagine being in prison because of the one thing that identifies you the most as a person, and that is your belief and your trust and your hope in God and just your dedication to serving Him. Okay, we've all seen the movies and stuff. When you get in prison, you get that one phone call. You get to call your close friends, your family, and I imagine that when I call them and to tell them about how my situation is, I'd probably be like, hey, I'm really scared, I'm in prison, can you send me money for bail? I mean, all these things would go through your mind when you talk about your status. Paul in Philippians in 1:19 through 26, he uses this section of his letter to talk about his status. And he writes this letter to the church at Philippi to tell them about his imprisonment. But this part of the letter is interesting because it's not so much about his status, but he gives information to the church at Philippi about his work as an apostle and how he can continuing to do that and how he encourages them to continue to do what they're doing. I broke this passage up into three sections because it is rather lengthy. So the first part is Philippians 1:19 through 20. For I know that through your prayers and the help of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, this will turn out for my deliverance. It is my eager expectation and hope that I will not be put to shame in any way, but by speaking with all boldness, Christ will be exalted now as always in my body, whether by life or by death. Paul is telling the church at Philippi right here that he has confidence in Christ. Two of the reasons for his confidence are the methods of support that he's getting. And he says through your prayers, and that's from his friends in the church at Philippi, and also from the help of the Spirit of Jesus Christ. And that's what's helping him to maintain his confidence. And he talks about how he knows that this will turn out for his deliverance. Translations of this, it can be deliverance from his release from prison, or it might possibly be his deliverance in death. And he just kind of wants to go ahead and say that to the church there. And he talks about how he has this eager expectation and hope that he will not be put to shame in any way. Eager expectation has been translated into watching with outstretched hand. And when I think about this watching with outstretched hand, it's like you're so eager and you're expecting it so badly, you know it's going to be there. The image that I get is of a baby, and like when they outstretch their hands and they're reaching, they know that their parent is going to be there. And that's how Paul feels about this shame, is that he's not going to be put to shame. And he has the confidence of that because even though it might seem like shame in our human eye to be put in prison and all that kind of stuff, it's not shame for him because his belief is in Christ. And despite all of his obstacles, it will come out triumphantly because Christ is his main focus and his main love and passion in life. And he says that will give him the way to speak with boldness. And this is an implication of freedom of speech. And it might possibly be him speaking in boldness in his upcoming trial, or the trial might currently be going on. We're not sure about that. But in reality, it's talking about him speaking boldness in his whole life. And he's kind of reflecting that confidence on the church of Philippi. And even in his worst, in his bondage, in his chains, he's still reflecting that confidence. The next section is 1:21 through 24. For to me, living is Christ and dying is gain. If I am to live in the flesh, that means fruitful labor for me, and I do not know which I prefer. I am hard-pressed between the two. My desire to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better, but to remain in the flesh is more necessary for you. In this part, Paul is saying how in either outcome, he can and he will live for Christ in all that he does. A very poignant phrase that we've all heard throughout our whole lives: living is Christ and dying is gain. And as I was studying this, looking at the Greek, it's really a neat kind of poetic rhetoric, I guess. It's very similar how the Greek is. And the Greek for Christ is Christos, and the Greek for gain is kerdos. And so when it's put into the phrase living is Christos and dying is keratos, it's really, they really kind of play off each other, how similar they sound. It's really powerful in the Greek language. This phrase is also important to know that it's not contrasting life and death, but really, if Paul lives for Christ, as long as he lives, Christ will be honored. But also, likewise, in his death, Christ will continue to be honored, and he'll get to be with Christ. And the next part of this part of the passage is about him being hard pressed, and Andrea gave us a great example of that. If you'll think back to the calves, and some translations of this are, "I'm hemmed in from two sides." And when I think about that, I mean, I think about hemmed, I think about clothes, and we're all women, and some days you wake up and your pants are really hemmed in from two sides, and really you feel like the tailor made them on your body, and you're like, what happened? Okay, it wasn't like that last night. But anyways, so that's kind of how, think about the pants. Think about that for Paul. And also another image of that is I'm torn in two directions. And the NIV translation uses this torn image, which kind of gives us to think about this tension that might have been there for Paul. When I think about this being torn, I think about family, and family is really important to me. And I have a younger brother, and I'm sure lots of you have younger siblings. We were kind of talking about that before class a little bit. And I also desperately love my parents. And if anything were to ever happen to them, when they die, when they go on, it's going to be a really hard road to travel down. And I'm going to want to go be with them, and I'm going to want to see them again, and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to need to be there for my younger sibling, for my brother, and to continue the example that my parents gave me, to bestow that onto him. And that's kind of where Paul is in this. And he's wrestling with his desire to go and be with Christ, but what's more necessary for them, and for his relationship with the church at Philippi. And I think that the fact that he's saying that's more necessary for you, I think that's a great example of this radical unity that's kind of been talked about all throughout Philippians. It's not about the person, it's about the whole and what's best for the whole. And I think Paul is just doing what he feels is best for the church at Philippi, and he's saying that he needs to be there to help them, and because they are his younger sister, younger brother. The next part of this passage, 1:25 through 26, "Since I'm convinced of this, I know that I will remain and continue with all of you for your progress and your joy in faith, so that I might share abundantly in your boasting in Christ Jesus when I come to you again." Paul is saying here, I will be with you to boast for Christ. When it says, I know that I will remain, the Greek, there's three translations of this word remain. One of the translations is paramino, which means to stay alive. And so that's kind of his final outcome of the kind of dilemma he had in the last part of the passage. And there's also this great relationship that I see between how he says, I'll remain and continue with you in your progress and your joy in the faith. I think those two are really partnered together, the progress and joy in faith. I think that the measure of your progress in Christianity can be seen in your deepening of your joy for Christ. And likewise, the deeper that you have this joy, the more joy that you have, you want to know Christ more and you want to progress more. And so I think that's a really neat relationship that those two phrases have with each other. And he ends this part of the passage by saying that he will join with them for boasting in Christ. And I think this is really important for the Philippians to hear, because they do have a great pride for Paul and a great honor for him, but he wants them to remember that it's about Christ, and they need to boast in the Lord, and he will be there to do that with them. Following this passage, 1:19 through 26, is the exhortation of the letter, and in 1:27 it's the theme verse where Paul talks about living your life worthy in a manner worthy of the gospel. And I think he's kind of setting the Philippians up in the part that I just spoke to you about, just to know that that's what Paul's doing it. He's not just going to tell them to do it and not do it himself, but he's doing that in his imprisonment and in his bondage, and he's going to live a life pleasing to Christ in his life and even through his death. So when Paul's writing this letter from prison, he's not calling to seek help. He's not writing, for them to send Bell or send the troops to get him. That's not what he's doing at all. And he's thinking of Philippi and putting them first, and just seeing what the church needs to continue living for Christ and growing for them. And he wants to remind them to keep their focus on Christ. And I just want to challenge you to think about when you're in the different chains of our lives and the different imprisonments. It might not be, we can't even fathom what Paul went through, but we can reflect on this to see how the different things in our lives just bind us down, but how we can still be an encouragement to others through that. And I think those are some of the most powerful ways to encourage others that are walking in Christ with you is through your struggles. And so just remember this Philippians 1:19 through 26. Emily.
Give Emily feedback, please.